Hey there and welcome. Today, we're jumping right into the high-stakes world of business expansion. It's a landscape just full of incredible opportunities, but, it's also packed with hidden dangers, and we're going to map that minefield together.
All right, so you've got this amazing product, a solid team, and your sights are set on new territory. The ambition's there, the drive is there, you're ready to make your move. But here's the real question. Are you ready for what you can't see?
And yeah, that's the brutal reality. Look at this. A staggering 50% of all those ambitious expansions, they stumble. Not because the idea was bad, but because of risks that were just lurking right under the surface. That's a number that'll keep anyone up at night for sure. But here's the big secret. Look, the goal isn't to find some magical path with zero risk. That just doesn't exist. The goal is to have a map and a compass. It's about turning risk management from, just some boring box-ticking exercise into your absolute sharpest competitive advantage.
All right, let's get into it. We're going to break down exactly how you shift from just gambling on a new market to making a really smart strategic play where you're the one controlling the odds.
Okay, first things first. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. When we talk about risk management, this is what we mean. This isn't about being negative. Not at all. It's a proactive process to protect your success, identifying, assessing, and mitigating. I like to think of it as your company's strategic immune system.
So where do we even begin? Well, you can't fight what you can't see, right? So this whole first part is about flipping on the lights and mapping out every single potential threat before you even take one step into that new market.
A really good risk assessment starts with a super wide lens. The categories range from the obvious stuff like financial and market risks to the stuff that's actually kind of easy to forget about, like cultural or political risks. And honestly, those are often the exact things that can totally sink a launch. A comprehensive plan has to consider all of them.
Okay, but brainstorming can leave you with this huge, overwhelming list of potential problems, right? Just 100 what-ifs. So, how do you figure out which threats are the ones that could actually sink the ship versus the ones that are just, tiny leaks?
Well, you use a super simple but really powerful tool, something like this risk impact matrix. Basically, for every single risk you've listed, you ask one simple question. If this thing actually happens, how bad is the damage? Is it a high-impact event that could literally cause failure? Or is it low impact, just a nuisance you can handle pretty easily? This is your first filter.
Now this is where it gets really cool. We take that impact rating and we combine it with one other critical factor. Likelihood. How likely is this thing to happen? And what you get is a prioritized hit list. It's brilliant. So a risk with high impact and high likelihood, like a supply delay, boom, that's a top priority. Something with high impact but low likelihood, like a sudden policy change, still important, but maybe not your number one fire to put out.
Okay, great. So we've mapped the minefield, we've got our prioritized list of threats. Now what? Now we move on to the next phase, actually building your strategic shield. This is where assessment turns into action. Your whole action plan really breaks down into these three clear lines of defense. First, you mitigate. You actively do things to make the problem smaller or less likely to happen. Second, you prepare. For the risks you just can't avoid, you've got a plan B ready to go. And third, you monitor. You set up tripwires so you can see trouble coming from a mile away. So let's dig into that first one. Mitigation, just a little bit more. It really comes in two flavors. You've got your preventative measures, that's stuff you do beforehand, like rigorously vetting a local partner to stop problems before they start. Then you have corrective measures. That's what you do after something goes wrong to control the damage, like having a crisis PR plan ready to launch. And you absolutely need both.
All right, now for that third line of defense, monitoring. And this is all about avoiding nasty surprises. For each of your biggest risks, you create an early warning sign. So if you're worried about your supply chain, you don't just wait for a shipment to vanish into thin air. No, you're tracking supplier delivery times every single week. The second that metric starts to slip, you know trouble's brewing, and you can act before it becomes a full-blown crisis.
But what if, despite all your planning, a risk actually becomes a reality? Well, that's where your contingency plan, your plan B, kicks right in. And listen, this isn't some vague idea. It's a very specific action tied to a very specific trigger. For example, if your partner starts failing to meet their KPIs, that's key performance indicators, you don't start scrambling. You immediately engage with a pre-vetted alternative you already have lined up. It's literally about having the answer ready before the question is even asked. That's the goal.
All right, so we've identified the risks, we've prioritized them, and we've planned our defenses. Let's bring this all home and really look at the ultimate payoff for all this hard work. This is how you turn a kind of daunting process into a seriously powerful strategic asset.
So what does all this work boil down to? One single, clear, unified strategic plan. It takes all that crazy complexity, all those what-ifs, and just boils it all down into one coherent strategy that everyone on your team can understand and actually execute on.
And here it is. This is what that plan looks like in its most powerful, actionable form. I mean, your entire detailed analysis, it gets boiled down to something a leader can grasp in seconds. Here are our top 3 risks, here's exactly what we're going to do about them, and here's how we'll know if they're coming. It's clear, it's concise, and it is focused on what truly matters most.
You know, when you get right down to it, it's this simple. A really solid risk management plan isn't some magic wand that makes all the dangers disappear. What it does is actually way more valuable. It gives you and your entire team the clarity and the confidence to walk into that new market knowing you're prepared for whatever it decides to throw at you.
And so that leaves us with the one essential question you have to ask yourself. It's the question that drives this whole process. Take this whole framework, apply it to whatever you're working on, and turn that scary uncertainty into your greatest strength.